Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and it's nice to be here again. I hope all of you are having this wonderful stay in this beautiful location. I have had the time of my life, and I'm sure you have too, and also with good academics. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to be talking about some aspects of nutrition in type 2 diabetes. The nutrition advice has undergone a sea change in the last few decades that you can see. Earlier, we used to have diet charts, 1200 calories, 1600, 1800, and we used to hand them out to the patients, and they were like not customized at all, and it was like a one size fits all kind. But we've come a long way from that, and now we talk about so many different things as far as nutrition is concerned. I'm going to show you data from this study called PRIDE, and I'm also going to show you my own data with a similar kind of product, with the same product in fact, but a similar kind of a study. So my disclosure is that I have been financially supported by this company for this particular talk only. So these are different anthropometric profiles of patients visiting a diabetic clinic. We just, in the last lecture, Dr. Veermani talked about different kinds of clusters, and we have different kinds of body types, and therefore we have different kinds of nutritional requirements. And you can see here that unlike what we thought, that our diabetic patients are not obese, you can see here the data tells you that we are indeed obese, and not just obese, but we also have abdominal obesity, and that is very well known. Now, the crux of the matter here is that why are we going so much behind nutrition when we have all these drugs in front of us? And it's just the numbers are just increasing. Every day there's a new drug, different classes of drugs, new pathophysiology, ominous octet, and what, dirty dozen, and unlucky 13. I keep hearing about more and more pathophysiology, more and more drugs coming in. But despite all of that, look at our figures. Not the literal figures, I'm talking about our metabolic figures. Literal figures are also bad, which I just showed you in the previous slide, and so are the metabolic parameters. So clearly, there is something that is missing, which means to say that despite all the best pharmacotherapeutic agents that we have, we are still not meeting targets. And the missing link here could very well be nutrition and lifestyle. So lifestyle modification becomes an important link between the person and pharmacotherapy and glycemic targets, and that is something that is not given enough of attention because it takes time, one, and second is old habits die hard, and lifestyle modification is not easy to achieve, and patients find it challenging. They don't know what they're supposed to eat, and we know that different people need different things, and the advice may not be customized, and therefore it needs a collaboration between the patient, the doctor, and the nutritionist so that everyone is on the same page. But whatever it may be, you know that we have pharmacotherapy, we have bariatric surgery, we have cutoff points for those, but you will see very clearly here that lifestyle modification, diet, physical activity is across the board. So whatever modality one might decide to adopt, lifestyle modification is a must, and it will continue right through the course of the disease, and that is why we need to talk about it. These were recommendations for obesity and weight management, ADA 2022, which are coming up. The ADA is coming up, but the consensus is already out. They talk about a high frequency of counseling. Not easy, expensive. We do not have enough expertise in India. Behavioral changes, extremely difficult, never talked about. We do not have enough people offering behavior counseling, but there is grade A evidence for that. Patients' preferences need to be taken into account, and most importantly, after the patient has lost weight, a long-term weight management program needs to be instituted, which never happens. One, because there is no such program in place in most centers of diabetes. Second is because patients do not come back and they're lost to follow up. So these are the practical problems. As I'm going along with this, I'm telling you along the way what we experience. So there are several challenges to dietary management, especially in India, and this, as you can see, is the most important. North, south, east, west, wherever you go, we have high carb, we have high fat, there is a lot of processed food coming in, refined grains, polished rice, several things are there which our ancestors never used. They used it in the purest form and they worked hard. So though the food looks to be the same, it is not the same. It is highly processed, and because of that, you find that a lot of metabolic diseases, disorders are coming in. You might have heard about endocrine disruptors. What are endocrine disruptors? Endocrine disruptors are those that are absolutely universally found everywhere in processed food, refined food, and in several other products that we use, and they disrupt metabolic pathways. And because of that, you can get metabolic disorders, and type 2 diabetes is one of them, cancer is another. And that is why, by and by, and you have seen evidence for this in the last 1 decade from 2011 onwards, when Roy Taylor actually popularized this. Rather than popularized, I will say brought it to the forefront. He talked about meal replacement. But look at this meta-analysis that involves 22 studies, 24 different interventions, and about 2,000 obese patients. And they found in this meta-analysis that the use of meal replacement-based low-energy diet is superior to just a food-based low-energy diet. And the reasons for this are many. The reasons mainly are that you are giving the right amount of carbs, calories, proteins, micronutrients, vitamins, etc. And that is why the meal replacements have actually worked. And this is what is going to be the crux of my talk, and also the study which I'm going to show you. So if you look at this particular study of 230 patients who use meal replacements, you can see that the A1C comes down very nicely. There is weight reduction by 5 to 7 kgs, low fasting plasma glucose, and there is significant reduction in blood pressure as well. So now we come to this particular study called the PRIDE study, which was an open label randomized controlled study to evaluate partial meal replacement program with ProHands D, which is the name of the meal replacement, targeting glycemic levels and weight control. In fact, in any such, either you call it a reversal of diabetes program or you call it any program, these are the two goals. One goal is weight reduction, second goal is glycemic control, very simple. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to evaluate the usage of this diabetic specific nutrition supplement along with a standard of care, which was the test arm, and the other arm was just standard of care without any meal replacement. And then they looked at the glycemic levels, the anthropometric measurement, lipid profile, and importantly, quality of life. Because when you're talking about lifestyle modification, please remember that quality of life becomes an extremely important issue because it is an everyday affair. It's not just popping a pill and forgetting about it. It is something that you do, something that you feel, because they say food is an emotion. And that is the reason that quality of life questionnaires become very important in all of these. And this was done for a period of 12 weeks. And you can see that the inclusion criteria are very simple. Males and non-pregnant females 18 to 65, type 2 diabetes more than 1 year with stable dose of oral drugs for more than a month, A1C ranging from 6.5 to 10, and a BMI between 23 to 34. So these were not highly obese patients, but they were overweight and obese both. And exclusion criteria, I won't go into the details. People who require anything very, very specific and who have any major comorbidities were not included in the study, and type 1 patients were not taken. Type 2 on insulin were also excluded in this particular study. And you can see that at baseline, they did the evaluations, and then they were randomized, and then the evaluation 2 was done at 12 weeks. Their primary endpoints, the first one I told you is glycemic control, of course, HbA1c. And the secondary endpoints were weight loss, the glycemic control, lipid profile, waist circumference, and quality of life. And safety events were hypoglycemia and any other adverse events. So this is the primary outcome. You can see here that the difference in A1C in the standard of care group at the end of 12 weeks was not significantly reduced, but whereas you can see that the p-value in the test arm, which received the meal replacements, it was substantial, a mean of 8.05 to 7.42. So glycemic control was achieved. Second outcome was weight. So you can see here that the weight reduction at 6 weeks and at 12 weeks, if you compare, you can see the huge difference in weight loss between the two groups. So clearly the usage of meal replacement as against just standard of care could give you good bit of weight loss. Waist circumference also was reduced in tandem, both at 6 weeks and at 12 weeks. It was highly significant if you had to compare it to just standard of care. Remember one thing, that standard of care therapy for diabetes can bring the blood glucose levels just to normal, and you can achieve a weight loss. This is what we see in practice of around 3 to 4 kgs, if followed very diligently. But if you want greater weight loss than that and greater glycemic control, then you have to go far beyond just regular standard of care that has been advocated in all these days. This is decrease in fasting blood glucose. You can again see that at both 6 weeks and 12 weeks, progressively, there was much better reduction in fasting blood glucose in the test arm with meal replacement as compared to the standard of care. The same holds true, especially at 12 weeks for postprandial blood glucose. So that also came down very nicely and was statistically significant. Now, this to me is a very important slide because it talks about quality of life. You're giving meal replacement, which a patient is not used to. You're giving food in the form of a liquid. Patient is not used to that. So what happens? So you can see here that people were adherent to their diabetes medication and they never felt hungry. Very, very important. Otherwise, adherence is not going to be there to the diet program. And they never felt, 66.2% patients never felt lethargic. And they had a good sense of well-being in 3/4 of the patient. This to me is a very important parameter when you are talking about giving a dietary lifestyle modification intervention to anybody. The safety analysis, none of them had any serious adverse events. It was safe and well tolerated, and they did not have hypoglycemia. So this is the post hoc analysis of that. And you can see that across the board, whatever be the baseline HbA1c, you can see that there was a very good reduction in HbA1c in all these patients who were given the meal replacement in addition to standard of care. Whatever be the baseline weight, there was good amount of weight loss in the test arm, as you can very well see here with the blue bars. And the BMI reduction in obese diabetic individuals at the end of 12 weeks was very, very significant with respect to the test arm as opposed to the standard of care, where there is some reduction. I told you, when there is standard of care, there is some reduction, which is good, but not enough. Waist circumference, something we are all interested in. We talk about the thin fat Indian, and therefore you see that there is a waist circumference decrease as well. So basically, what they found was that partial meal replacement with a product like this resulted in significant improvement in glycemia, weight, waist circumference. People were satisfied with the taste, and it's a useful add-on to pharmacotherapy. And if you want additional weight reduction and a constant reduction in A1C, then perhaps this is something to think about in selected good patients. Now, this is my own data. Let me be very clear here that I have used ProHance-D for this particular study. I have not been funded for this study. This is my very own study. So there is no funding from any pharma for this study. And I'm going to show you this. This was presented at the ACE in 2020. In this study, what we did was we aimed to study the impact of a VLCD, basically a VLCD on obesity indicators and other metabolic comorbidities. So it was given for 6 months. It included a structured diet plan, and low calorie of 800 to 830 calories was made up of 3 shakes a day. So we didn't do partial meal replacement. We did full meal replacement all the 3 times, and we assessed the clinical and biochemical parameters, 72 subjects. And you can see here the p-values with respect to weight, body mass index, waist circumference, hip, neck circumference, arm circumference, body fat, etc. And you can find that there is a significant difference over here. And the comparison of metabolic parameters before and after intervention, you can see here HbA1c at the end of the study was 7.3 to 6.7. Fasting came down, PP came down, blood pressure came down, lipids came down, and most importantly, liver fat was reduced. We found that so many of them were completely, the liver fat was completely gone. So that was the important part. So there was a significant impact towards reversal of metabolic disorders that was observed following a structured, very low-cal diet intervention in this cohort with the help of meal replacements. So the take-home message here is that there is no substitute for lifestyle modification. Second, there is no one size that fits all. Does this mean that I put every patient on meal replacement? No, I don't. So I have to choose my patient. I have to see whether he can do it. Behaviorally, is he motivated? Is he going to adhere to it? Can he afford it? These are all the different things that we do. Can we give him full meal replacement for some time till he loses weight if his weight is very high? Or does he just need a little help with just one meal replacement a day or a partial meal replacement a day? So it is not just giving a meal replacement. There's a science to it. And one has to do it very diligently, very judiciously, choose the right patient. But I'm sure that this is one modality which is actually our friend, a benefit to us, and we can show the outcomes to the patient. Thank you very much.